Welcome to LegacyCast, your source for hearing from top influencers, industry experts, and successful business owners who are telling their unique story about life, values, goals, business strategies, and the various causes they are so passionate about. Future generations will come to be impacted by what is happening today, whether positive or negative, and our mission is to focus on what is going to affect change for the better. Hosted each weekday by James Snow, a former U.S. Army combat medic, now founder and principal advisor of James Advisors Group, a full-service financial planning firm in North Texas. This is LegacyCast. Welcome, LegacyCast listeners. This is your host, James Snow, coming to you from the family-friendly LegacyCast bunker here in North Texas. I have a very interesting guest with me today, Randy Mortensen. And Randy is going to be talking to you about, a bunch of different things, what his version of legacy is. But in addition to that, Randy is someone who comes with a very interesting past, one I can understand in parts of. From a personal level, but also with his business in the space of compulsive and destructive behaviors. So that's something that as a veteran myself, I see a lot of that. I see a lot of the destructive behaviors that's going on in our veteran community. Compulsive behaviors, different dependencies and whatnot. So there's going to be a lot of relevance here because we do have as you guys know a lot of listeners here. Are from the veteran space, and so I hope that this is able to reach out and impact some people, give you some insights. So without further ado, I'd like to bring in our guest this morning, Randy. Welcome to the program.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share a bit of what's going on in my world and what I'm passionate about.
Great. It's certainly a pleasure and honor to have you here. And from what I'm understanding from you, when we were doing our speaking just before beginning the program, you do executive recovery coaching and are also an author. That's correct?
That is correct. My mission when I get up in the morning today is to assist management professionals that are struggling, as you mentioned a minute ago, with some of the compulsive or destructive behaviors. And it's really jeopardizing not only their careers, but it's also tearing apart marriages and creating broken families. So that's what I get up in the morning to do, is to work alongside men and women who are in management positions where it's not really safe for them to acknowledge to HR, to their superiors, that they're just battling.
Right. Yeah, and you're mentioning the executive because it's sort of the high performing alcoholics are in that realm because just being in the finance sector myself, you would be surprised how many people in my space are struggling with that and something that I have myself struggled with as well. So it's something that is very prevalent, even though you may not recognize it or you may not know it. It's sort of the invisible injury or the invisible illness, you might say.
Right. And what I refer to it is that mask that we hide behind too often.
Sure.
When I was in the financial services world, similar to what I believe you're doing today, on the outside, the image was everything's fine, but deep inside, I was just an emotional wreck, and my compulsive drinking was creating major challenges for my personal life, even though I would have said I was a, quote, functional alcoholic. Those two words don't really belong in the same sentence, I would say. True.
And so, as the program name implies, we speak about legacies here, and obviously for everyone that comes on the program and everyone listening, that's going to mean something different. For some, their legacy is a financial one. For others, their legacy is going to be an educational one. What are they teaching their children or for people that are teachers. What are they teaching the next generation behind them? People that are coaches, what are they instructing? And so it's really a different thing for for per person. And so I like to refer to it as your story. It's how do you want to be known by the generations that are going to be coming behind us, so that they know who you were, what you cared about, what you're passionate about, the things that you loved, what you did to really affect positive change for those around you, and for those that come in contact with you, that they're better people for having known you. That being your story, and you wanting to tell it your way so that they get to hear all of that. What does having a legacy mean?
Well, I think that just the term legacy can mean many things to many different people. For me, as I'm fortunate to speak around the globe, I talk about significance, and here in North America, I'll say, at your funeral, what are you hoping somebody will say about you, or what do you want to be remembered for, or what individual or what group of people do you desire to be remembered for having an impact in their lives? For me, it was I had a great upbringing. I started drinking when I was 13. Even though I was a star athlete in high school, my dad was actually the mayor in the small rural Minnesota town where I grew up. So my legacy, I thought, was the American dream, which is to get a good education, marry the right woman, have a family, buy a house, and work for 40 years and retire and live happily thereafter. My path was a little bit more rocky than that. I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars by the time I was 25, 26 years old. A long time ago, that was a lot of money. But my personal life was just chaos. And so as I worked through the progression of destruction in my life, I knew I was searching for something that I hadn't achieved. And by the time I was in my mid to late 30s, I was an executive of an electric and gas utility. I was overseeing a $125 million business unit, had a large 4,000 square foot home, drove a new Mercedes every 2 years. I had to obtain my pilot's license, so I had an airplane in the hangar, and I was a member of one of the nicest country clubs in the area in which I live. So I thought I had achieved everything that I had set out to do, but yet there was something missing. And in reference to your comment about what's my legacy, I really didn't have one as I turned 50, and I read a book called From Success to Significance by a gentleman who's now a friend of mine named Lloyd Reeb. And it really was the aha moment for me was this. I thought I was in pursuit of money, or in pursuit of the things money could buy, when in reality I had accomplished all of that, but yet I still had this emptiness and this brokenness, and knew there had to be more, which is why I then actually retired early and sought out work in the human trafficking movement, also in alleviation of poverty here domestically. And then for the last 13 years, my wife and I have been leading an organization doing work in Haiti. So I've been actually involved in global poverty alleviation programs and working in that. So significance and legacy to me is something, if you would have told me 15 years ago, I'd be doing what I'm doing now. I'll say this to my friends, it may not be appropriate, but I would have said you're smoking crack because this is not my plan.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of is a very common story for a lot of people, that people are they're doing something for a period of time, but then like you pointed out, you have that aha moment, that sort of paradigm shift that kind of brings full circle, maybe where you came from and then where you're headed, and you start taking a different direction because you start seeing that there is a different course for your life. And that was even the case for me, because I was in IT doing data security and identity theft kind of stuff way back when in my past life. And so to go from that to finance, though there was a logical course of action at the time, people hearing the story now, they're like, okay, how'd you go from that to this? Because to to many people, it doesn't make sense. But,
Right.
I did have that aha moment also that, really deep down, what I want to do is help people and protect people. And so, what better place to do that than to protect the very thing that helps hold your family together and provide for your family and protect your family. So, that's sort of how I ended up where I did. But now, when you're thinking about maybe your business, for example, for a moment here, is it a very deliberate conversation that you have with yourself about what a legacy means and how you incorporate that into your personal and business life? That you're going to do this because that's going to leave a lasting ripple on society?
Yeah, in the word that I use a lot is impact. So not only what is that legacy, or what do I want to be remembered for, but who and where can I actually affect an impact? And so as I'm dealing with executive level, mostly men, but a few women, I'm asking them that. Where do you believe you can make an impact, because you have the power, you have the passion, and your inspiration has maybe been suppressed, but how do we make an impact in today's world? There's too many of us, I think, that are sitting back, waiting for the government to do something, or waiting for other leaders to do something. When in reality, if we individually have a passion and we have a focus and we know our purpose, I think then each and every one of us can do our small part.
Yeah, and you made a point there that is really a profound one. And because I do have veterans that are listeners of the program as well. Yeah, you mentioned the government offering something or the government handing something. Yeah, that's a dangerous double-edged sword that a lot of people don't see, because if somebody can give it to you, they can also take it away.
Right.
And so, if you're wanting to have a legacy and be part of something bigger, don't let it rely and depend upon what you're getting from somebody else. You have to chart that course and be deliberate and intentional to where you're actually creating something and you're protecting something that no one can take away, because that really is the big thing. And there's so much brokenness in society, not just veterans, but across the board. So much brokenness and the scarcity mindset rather than the abundance mindset. And so that's something that is really huge in my world, is that I try to change perspectives and to change people's way of thinking, to where instead of thinking about I only have this, look at it as, well, I'm blessed to have this, and change your mindset, because it's going to make all of the difference between whether you're climbing uphill or whether you're able to just slide through and have a much easier time at it.
Right. And what with the work that I've been fortunate to do in Haiti, and we've done a lesser amount of work in a couple of African nations, what I've observed is number one, I will never give up my U.S. passport, as critical as I may be of some operations and some programs that are creating dependability or dependence, basically. What I've observed in our long time efforts in Haiti is, we as Americans, and I would even extend that to we as North Americans and some Europeans, were well intentioned in our programs intended to help people, similar to what we've done with our welfare program here in the U.S. It was well intentions that created some of these handouts, but what we've done, and I've observed this firsthand in Haiti, what we've done is we've created chronic dependency, and we've stolen the dignity of our Haitian brothers and sisters. So my goal in Haiti, and even some of the inner city work that I've done here in the U.S., my mission is really to eliminate that chronic dependency and restore the dignity of the people. And I think we as men and women who care about each other, I'm old enough to remember when the communities were such that if you had someone 3 doors down that didn't have a meal that night, sure as heck my mother or somebody else was going to make sure those kids were fed. And we've lost that sense of community in the United States, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I'm of the Vietnam era, and I have buddies that died in Vietnam. So I'm very compassionate and empathetic towards veterans that are struggling with psychological issues, mental health issues, whether it be anxiety or depression. And here in Brevard County, we have a high degree of substance use disorder or abuse and homelessness. So I was just in an event a week ago, Thursday, where this group is really focused on eliminating that dependency, eliminating the homelessness, and really allowing those men and women who have served our country to be restored, basically. So I mean that's long and rambling, but I totally understand the dependency that's been created. I think it was an unintended consequence in many instances. I really do.
Yep. I agree, and I'm glad that you made that connection because especially with what you're doing, in the compulsive and destructive behavior realm, is that when you put someone on those those dependency programs, then it seems like it's a very slippery slope that before long, you mentioned the dignity aspect, the self-esteem aspect, that when you're on that program, you then start to feel like less of a person, which sort of is again, the slippery slope, the downward slide towards some form of dependency as the quote unquote pain reliever, or to mask the pain that they're feeling because of other things, maybe not feeling like they're as adequate because they're on these programs, and that going back into that brokenness mindset, that if we just empowered and lifted up people instead of putting them on those programs, or at least let that only be a temporary springboard to an upward momentum, because all of those things seem to be very hand in hand, and then also divorce and suicide and what have you, they all seem to be intertwined, to where one thing leads to another thing and leads to another thing, and then before long, as we know in our community, is having 22 veterans a day that are committing suicide. All of that having been caused by either financial stresses or dependency stresses, divorce, all of those different things that have caused people to crumble in their life. That there are better ways, and part of what you're doing is one of those better ways of helping people climb out of that hole. So as I passed along to you earlier, part of my mission is to crush the stigma of mental illness, crush the stigma of the drug abuse, crush the stigma of the fast-growing opioid crisis, and we're very empathetic, and we embrace news when somebody is diagnosed with cancer or diabetes or some one of those sort of physical conditions. Mm-hmm. But yet I remember people referring to me as one of those people, right? Yeah. So the stigma of those people, that person that was going in to seek alcohol treatment, or the person who now is battling anxiety and depression, so they're given medication that was benefiting, I would say, and this is a little radical, I guess, but benefiting only the pharmaceutical companies in many instances, because there is certainly a need for the psychological treatment, but there's also in some instances a need for some medically assisted treatment. And you mentioned the suicide rate earlier amongst veterans. There's treatment programs that have been around for 50, 60 years for alcohol and drugs that the insurance companies are now beginning to be reluctant to fund those treatment programs. Why? Because 7 out of 8 people that are going through the typical treatment program, the traditional treatment program, 7 out of 8 people are relapsing within the first 30 days. So there's a movement now that I'm fortunate, blessed to be a part of. It's called intensive outpatient therapy, where as long as you have a safe bed to sleep in at night, as long as you have a job, why take that person out of their natural surroundings and take them away for 30, 60, or 90 days at a cost of as much as $35,000 to $40,000 a month? Why not look at a different model, which is now the IOT, or the intensive outpatient therapy,
which I'm becoming more of an advocate for as I'm seeing more success with that, compared to the way that we've done it for the last 50, 60 years, where it's not been working. It's not been successful, but yet we've continued it.
Okay, now you're mentioning the intensive outpatient therapy, and I kind of want to deviate a little bit here so that we can dig a little deeper in that, because that sounds like a very, very important thing that you're involved in. So maybe if you can tell us a little bit more about what that is.
Well, there's a few things that have been happening in the recovery world as it interacts with the insurance and even with the VA. I would say there's been interaction with the VA as far as providers as well as with insurance companies. Right. As I mentioned a minute ago, there's been a reluctance to fund a $1,000 to $1,500 a day treatment program for the person that's already been through 5 of them, but now he or she's struggling. Okay, so the movement was started. It's a few years ago now, where the health industry, the health provider industry, or professionals were really looking at an alternative, and so we're now starting to use the term substance use disorder instead of being an addict or an alcoholic. You're a person with a substance use disorder, which is accurate. It's still describing the same poor behaviors and so on, but there's a growing group of individuals that are now recognizing that if we can do what the industry term is IOT, intensive outpatient therapy, we now do not have to take that person out of his or her job. We don't need to take them out of their family surroundings. We don't need to put them, flying 1,500 miles to get to a treatment program. You now have that professional stay in their job, maybe at 3:00 in the afternoon, 5 days a week. They end up going to therapy or going to group sessions in their own neighborhoods. And the level of success is greatly improved, because now not only is the individual who's struggling with the substance use disorder getting help he or she really wants, but you can now also engage the spouse or loving family members or children, because they're now able to participate into some levels of care in that same geographical location. And here's what I can tell you, having done this I'm fortunate to be sober almost 28 years. The most powerful thing that somebody can hear when they're just battling the demons of addiction or the depression brought on by alcoholism, somebody wants to hear from another person, I know how you feel. I felt the same way. Here's what I was in pursuit of. Here's who I am today. Somebody wants to see that champion who's been successful, because it's the guilt and the shame that gets you drunk again. It's the guilt, the shame, the resentments that will cause people to be suicidal. It's the anxiety and depressions that are multiplied by the guilt, the shame, the anger, the resentments, and so on. So that's why intensive outpatient therapy is proven to be less expensive. It's also proven to be far more successful than the traditional 30, 60, or 90-day treatment programs.
So it sounds like there's a couple key points that you're mentioning here. One of those obviously being the dignity that you're able to maintain by going through the intensive outpatient therapy, instead of having to go into the quote unquote program, going into a clinic or something that can come with a stigma. Is
right.
You're able to have the dignity of you're still staying in your job, still sleeping in your own bed, you're staying with your family. But then the second part that I'm hearing also is the core family unit is part of the program, because the spouse can go in there and can be there with them, because in a good marital relationship, obviously the spouse is one of their champions. It's somebody that's there to give them strength when they're not feeling very strong. And so it sounds to me that that's a very huge component as well, that the spouse is able to step up and be there with them and help in this case literally hold their hand through the program. Right.
And what I realize, and I speak on this topic a lot too, is that the people that love us the most, the people that we care about the most, the people that have always been there for us are those individuals who we've really damaged relationships. We've abused the relationships, just by, I tell the story very often. I couldn't remember whether I told the truth or not when I was in the insanity of my drinking. I couldn't remember if you and I had a conversation, whether I told you the truth yesterday or not. So too many times I realized that I was telling a lie because I didn't know whether I told you the truth or I told you a lie the day before. So you're telling a lie to cover up a lie that never happened. So when you get to the point where you don't trust yourself, you don't believe yourself, when you've hurt those that love and care about you the most, the worst thing we can do is take that person, put them on an airplane, and send them to Central or South Florida for treatment. And now your biggest supporters are hours away from you. Why not facilitate a program in your neighborhood to not only restore the dignity, but also to leverage that support network that is naturally there?
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of healing can come from that too, because that spouse or that family member is part of the program, and so then they're able to be part of that healing as well, and
right.
strengthen the relationship when there actually were wounds that were created in the process.
Yeah, absolutely, very deep wounds, and
right.
and part of the program is making amends, and that's one of the hardest things I think for people battling through recovery is the guilt and shame, and so it's the inpatient the IOT, the intensive outpatient therapy, I think is going to serve our communities well. I mean, think about having a treatment for cancer. You go to chemo treatment and then you go back home, or you go, whatever that treatment is for any of the other illnesses. We've been treating addictions and compulsive behaviors differently, and I think we're now beginning to realize some of our faults.
Yeah. Well put. Excuse me. So, if you were thinking about your business and its future from a CEO standpoint for a moment, what would you say maybe a few things are that are keeping you up at night about your business in particular?
Yeah, one of the things I ask people when I'm seeking information is, what's your 2:00 in the morning problem? What's your 2:00, what's waking you up at 2 in the morning? Mm-hmm. I think that the real challenge for me, even though I have, some would say, a bit of an impressive resume because of my corporate background and the nonprofit work I've done, it's somewhat difficult because I don't have the right initials behind my name. I'm not a educated psychologist or psychiatrist or a professional in the medical field per se, or in that treatment field. So that's a bit of a challenge for me personally. I think the other item is it's the stigma. It's not safe for people to readily admit to me. My go-to-market strategy is I'll do an assessment with an individual, and then I put people literally from coast to coast and border to border into cohorts of 16 people on Zoom calls, and it's the confidentiality and the anonymity that sometimes is difficult for that high-level professional to wonder who else is seeing his or her face on the call. So that's a bit of a challenge, is just embracing it. So it's number one. It's the lack of professional designations that I battle to a bit, or to some extent. But then it's not safe, which is that whole message that I want to get out there, that we crush the stigma.
Mm-hmm. So do you believe that it's important for people, especially personal life and business life, to create some sort of a strategy that gets them through and helps them go through the success process?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been fortunate to now be married almost 29 years to a wonderful woman. And every Labor Day since 1994, we go away on a planning retreat. The two of us do. And And in that plan, we set personal goals, we set business goals, we set spiritual goals, and then we set family goals. And it's interesting to see how some of our strategies and mindsets and goals have shifted over the last 20 years, 20 plus years. So absolutely, do we need a roadmap? Definitely, every person needs a roadmap, both in their professional life as well as in their personal life. And so I think it would be like starting in Los Angeles, driving for some goofy reason to New York, right? You wouldn't go without a map. You wouldn't go without your phone today. So why do we treat our lives any differently? If we don't have goals, if we don't have objectives, then how are we going to know whether we're falling short or whether we're accomplishing what we're setting out to do?
Yeah, and it amazes me, as I'm consulting with different business owners, how many actually are doing that very thing. Kind of flying by the seat of their pants. Going willy-nilly without really having that plan. That they start a business because they're so excited to get into it, but never took the time to do the business plan before opening their doors. And right. Like I say, it amazes me how many people are doing that. And in fact, that kind of leads me to the next few questions that I had for you. Excuse me. Is what would be some of the reasons that you think maybe some of the starting out entrepreneurs are failing and giving up?
Lack of a plan, number one. That would, as a former banker, I can also attest to some of the startups that I've been a part of, where I would ask them, well, what are your revenue goals or what are your margin goals? And, well, I want a lot. Well, okay, what's a lot mean? And so as I, there's enough evidence to convict me of being a serial entrepreneur. I bought and sold 3 businesses over a period of 14 years. And I was fortunate to always have the gift of relationship building or, sales. But I think the other thing is that people newly starting in business are not really drawing on some of the knowledge and the wisdom that people that others in their circles have. And then I'm also observing that too many people are talking 70% of the time when they should be listening 70% of the time and talking 30%, because we can draw on a lot of wisdom of people with some gray hair. Or somebody that's gone before us, basically. So that, sure. I think ego and pride is really why 7 out of 8 startups fail in the United States. And they thought they were passionate about it, but they may have been really good at sewing those shoes or producing that widget, but they had no idea how to do marketing, had no idea how to do a balance sheet, had no idea how to actually get the product to market, and that's what's holding a lot of them back.
Yeah, and that kind of leads over to the concept of to where you're actually delegating some of those tasks, because when you put together that plan, you also know at this point I'm going to need to have this person because I'm not good at that, and so it really lets you know. It's kind of like your analogy of traveling across the country. It's like, okay, at this point I need to have my co-pilot, so to speak, take over the wheel, because, I'm not going to be good in this area. Maybe I'm afraid of heights, so I don't want to drive across the Rockies. That would be a smart decision, because you might just end up, taking a switchback and going off the edge if you're afraid of heights. So, it's good to, hand off, the baton, so to speak, and let somebody else handle that piece of the job.
Right.
And if you don't have a plan, you don't know if that's coming up. And so then you become, like you say on the statistic, one of the 7 out of 8 that end up failing.
Yeah, I think another observation that I would say too, James, is that too many wannabe entrepreneurs believe that their greatest limitation is they don't have enough money, when in reality money becomes such a crutch to us, and in many ways it's more of a burden than it is a blessing. If you have access to a lot of capital, because if you can't manage a little, how are you going to manage a lot? is what I've said to many people as I've been involved in investing in some startups.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what are some of the roadblocks that, in your experience, that you would advise new entrepreneurs to watch out for? And then the flip side of that question, I'll do kind of a two-parter here, is what would be some of the resources that you would advise them to be keeping their eyes out for?
The second part of that question is a little bit easier for me to answer than the first, I guess. I'm a big believer in networking in your local communities. So getting plugged in to, if it's a functional chamber of commerce, getting involved in some of your professional organizations have served me very, very well over the years. And I think if you're going to build a business, it's imperative that you know who your competitors are, number one, but it's also important to know who your potential strategic alliances might be with in your community. And our communities are growing, with the connectivity of the world. Our communities are no longer within that 10-mile radius or that 100-mile radius. Our communities can be, coast to coast. I think that the pitfalls that I've seen in startups that I've been part of the audience to observe is maybe their timing was off. Maybe they were too late to the party. The pitfalls may have been that they came from a family that wasn't necessarily a family of encouragement. In other words, they were talking about how they were destined for failure instead of destined for success. So I think attitude is a significant part of being a successful entrepreneur. I remember working 80, 90 hours a week for many, many years, where I wasn't going to fail. What I say from stage now is I never lose. I either win or I learn.
Right.
Or I may refer to myself as a non-winner, but I would never want that label of loser pasted on my forehead. So I'm either winning or I'm learning through the challenges that I face. But there's no, as you know, there's no better feeling than being your own boss, and that's where I speak with people that are in my coaching business that are just struggling because they don't have freedom, because they feel trapped. And being an entrepreneur certainly gives you a good amount of freedom, as long as you have a sufficient cash flow, which will oftentimes retard somebody's growth if they don't have that sufficient cash flow. But the freedom that comes and the lifestyle that's available being an entrepreneur is second to none, in my opinion.
Oh, very true. Very true. Something I've certainly enjoyed, about being an entrepreneur is, being able to, kind of, drive the bus, as I'll call it, being able to control your course and course correct, the way that you want to, rather than, following someone else's agenda or someone else's, roadmap, as it were. Is you've basically written your own roadmap to be able to, chart that course.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say very often, this country was built on the backs of entrepreneurs. Right. It was the people selling the picks and the shovels to those that were doing the gold mining that were doing well. So this country, the heritage of this company is based on freedoms, as well as the entrepreneurs that took a risk and risked everything, in order to build their businesses and so on. So I'm proud of the heritage that's here, and I really look to supporting those next generations to say, don't just settle for mediocrity. How do we achieve higher levels of success? But success doesn't always mean your 401k or your savings account. Success is measured by freedom, it's by lifestyle, it's by quality of life, it's by longevity, it's by relationships. I mean, there's many adjectives that we could use to define success, where too often I think we get trapped by the vehicles we drive, the houses we live in, and the, our W-2s, basically.
Yeah, fair point there. Some golden nuggets for people listening today, because that's certainly a good perspective on it, is not looking at the ledger, but instead the outcome of what that ledger is producing. That's what's going to give you joy.
Right.
Is really what you're achieving, not so much what you're accumulating. Kind of going back to the point you were mentioning earlier, everybody's at your graveside. They're going to ask one of two questions: is how they impact people, but the other question is, it's always going to be somebody to say what do they leave behind, and the answer to that is obvious. They left everything. So what are you leaving? Is it just money? Is it just money in the bank, or are you leaving a bunch of lives that have been impacted?
Right. Yeah. I remember as my grandfather was dying, I said to him, I said, Grandpa, if you could change anything in your life, what would it be? He said, well, I wouldn't have worked as hard as I did, and I would have spent more time with my children. And I took away from that the regrets as a person is leaving this world. The regrets are not those things they did and failed at. It's those things that they wish they had done and didn't even try. Those are the regrets that I speak about often too. So it's okay to fail. It's okay to fall short, but we have to get up, dust ourselves off, and persevere for sure. So it's the regrets that hold too many people back. And when I say it's the what ifs, right? It's that fear of failure that holds too many of us back, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. So how do your personal values, either value systems and so forth, how does that show up in your particular work? And how do you how would you advise other people to incorporate their value systems, either intellectual values or even spiritual values, into their particular ventures? How would you advise that?
Yeah, I have an interesting journey. My book that's coming out shortly is titled "God Took Me to Las Vegas to Get Sober." So it's been an interesting journey for me. And I was introduced on stage. It's a few years ago now, and the CEO that was introducing me said to me, he said, so Randy, he said, tell me what's important to you in your life, and why are you here? And I thought, oh man, this wasn't exactly the audience for me to share my spiritual journey. And, but yet I said, well, here's what's important to me. Number one is God in my life is number one. Number two is my wife. Number three is my family. And number four is the opportunity to serve here in this role or my business. And for me, when I gained that clarity in March of 1992, that's really when my life started to radically change. I had been sober for about 18 months by that time, but it changed perspective for me from a value standpoint, because up until that time, I was going to do whatever it took to win. And no matter who I had to hurt, no matter who I had to harm, no matter what I had to say or do, I was going to win. And from a value standpoint today, I really want people to behave in fair and equitable manners. I want to live a life where I'm recognized for the values and the characteristics and the integrity that I desire to have. So I think what I heard a while ago now is the best sermons, whether you're a churchgoer or not, the best sermons are those that you watch, not those that you hear. So when we're actually living the life of who we want to be, who we desire to be, that life of integrity, character, values, and purpose, that's when other people notice, and that's when they want to follow you. And that's where those are the values that I sleep well at night. I have an opportunity to interact with men and women literally around the globe, and I just want to be a beacon where I wish I would have changed lifestyles and some of my destructive behaviors before I reached my late 30s. but I'm fortunate to put a few 24-hour periods together now, and life's good.
Sure. Yeah, and thank you for putting that in there, because I also am a person of faith, and so that is very much what drives what I do in business. And very similarly, it was one of those epiphany moments that when you kind of put into perspective what got you to where you are and what is truly important. And so I'll tell people my life, both personal and business, follows the 3 F's: is faith, family, finances, in that order. And so
Yes.
it's always I stick to that. That is my direction, sort of my outline. And so if it doesn't fall into one of those 3 things, it doesn't matter.
Right. What else is there other than those 3? Yeah, for sure.
So as we're kind of winding up our time here this morning, I had the final question here for you before we get your contact info, and that would be it's kind of a trivia question that I like to ask people as we wind out. And what is there something about you that people that kind of know you, not necessarily the ones that know you the best, but just in general, people that know you that they don't know about yet? Some little trivia thing that.
See, I asked that same question, but normally nobody asks me that question. So good job putting me on the spot. I think the people who have known me for the last 25 years of my life have no hint of the brokenness, the hurt, and the pain that I experienced the first 20 years of my life, as an adult. So the people that's one thing. I think the others would be surprised to hear that as a young kid in Minnesota, I would get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning to go duck hunting before school.
Oh wow!
I can't imagine doing that today. I don't know that the youth would still even do that, but we were so passionate about hunting and fishing back in that era of life that I just shake my head to even think back to that era. So those are 2 things.
Yeah, and on that note of the hunting and fishing, maybe we should go back to doing some of that. Send the kids out there. Take away their iPads and send them out. Hunting and fishing, and enjoy
or playing basketball in the driveway.
Enjoy the things that truly matter, and not just what they're doing on their Facebook account.
Well, and I would suggest to you, it's not only the kids today. When you sit in a restaurant or you sit anywhere, we're so addicted to our phones these days. And I'm guilty of the same thing. We think we're so connected that we've lost the relationship opportunities that are right in front of us, and we just aren't bold enough to reach out to that stranger.
Yeah, and I've seen many times couples at a restaurant, and they're texting each other when they're sitting right across the table from each other. And it's just like, okay, that's the ultimate low in their relationship is, why not just speak to them? They're right there, 2 feet away from your face, and you're sending them a text instead.
Right. Yeah. Just shake. Yeah, we just shake our head at that.
So Randy, how would people be able to get a hold of you? Obviously there's going to be listeners that want to know more and to be able to get more insight and more information. So what are some good contact techniques for them?
Sure. My phone number is actually 321-757-HOPE. So 321-757-HOPE is my office number. And you can find out more about the executive recovery coaching at extremeinfluence.org.
Okay.
So just extremeinfluence.org. Yeah. And then my email, that's complicated because it's long. It's rmortensen@extremeinfluence.org. But you can get to me via the website too.
Okay. Okay, Randy. Well, I appreciate your time with us today, and getting to know you a little bit better, and get your information out there for people to listen to, and for the listeners, take this information that you've heard today and apply it. Apply it to your life, or at least incorporate it into your knowledge of how you can help others to apply it to theirs, because there is a lot of need out there, and so let's certainly do what we can to take care of that.
Yeah, and James, I would just add that every four Americans are impacted by somebody else's compulsive and destructive behavior. So it's either you or somebody in your family or your workplace. So it's not okay just to say nothing or to do nothing. So I would just encourage people to take action and to do something.
Sure. Great note. And on that, I'll end this program the way I do with every time. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you around the bend, my friend.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You've been listening to Legacy Cast. Thank you for joining us today, and be sure to come back next time as we speak with more top influencers, industry experts, and business owners from around the world.